Welcome to the TOEIC TOEFL IBT Independent Writing Tasks, Day 5, Part 1. Our objectives for this video are to finish our coverage of Part 3, Writing the Body, and discuss an important test tip about developing the body to the max. Then we'll move on to Part 4, Writing the Conclusion. We will discuss an important test trick about not repeating the thesis, then do an activity called Hard to Say Goodbye. Then it will be your turn to do an activity. So again, to wrap up our discussion of Part 3 in Writing the Body, it's always important to go back and look at the entire writing process to make sure we know where we've been and where we're going. So again, we started several weeks ago with Part 1, Planning Before We Write, and then discussing how to write the introduction. In Writing the Body, we discussed the importance of coming up with at least 2 reasons, and showing how these reasons connect to the thesis by using appropriate topic sentences. The topic sentences, of course, need to connect using important signal words or transitions, and this shows how the paragraph fits into the overall essay. Again, we use examples that are relevant to the topic, that the examples themselves are logical, they make sense and are supported by other information, and that we follow a general organizational style that shows how we connect examples to the reasons we're discussing, as we have demonstrated in this graphic here. We also discussed the importance of cohesion, which means connecting ideas and helping the text flow together by using signal words and synonyms, repeated or rephrased words and ideas. And of course, the importance of paragraph unity, in which all of the ideas in the essay relate to the main controlling idea, which of course is known as the thesis, and that all ideas or sentences in the paragraph relate to the many controlling idea in each topic sentence. So, it's important to remember that whether you're writing a defense, explanatory, or a comparison essay, the body of the essay is the most important part on the TOEIC or TOEFL. Now, of course, in order to receive a higher score, you will need a strong introduction and conclusion, which is what we're going to discuss in today's video. But the body is really where the argument is being made. When we move on to Part 5, Managing Your Time on the Tests, we will talk more about how much time to devote to this section of the essay. In our overall essay format, we've introduced the introduction and the body, and now today in this video we're going to discuss the very important conclusion. First off, the conclusion itself doesn't need to be extremely long, especially on the TOEIC or TOEFL. And the key is to revisit the thesis without necessarily repeating it. It's the final paragraph in the essay, and it serves several purposes. Of course, it's to indicate that we're reaching the end of the essay, and to revisit that thesis and the main ideas of the essay without repeating them necessarily word for word. And then perhaps leave the reader with some final thoughts on the topic, especially since this is a personal essay. Now, typically, conclusions begin with some kind of concluding signal word or transition. Words such as in summary, or to sum up, in conclusion, or to conclude. Now, in our sample essay, which now an entire copy of this essay can be found below this video, you will see that in the conclusion that I've written here, the important thing is to analyze the particular parts that connect to the ideas that have been stated throughout the rest of the essay. So again, notice our signal word to begin this. And of course, these types of signals or transitions aren't essential, but certainly are helpful when it comes to beginning the paragraph. Then you will notice how I revisit the thesis without necessarily repeating it. So notice I say that team sports have played a significant role in my personal and professional development. And again, part of the idea with the thesis was to show the importance of team sports. Then I review the main parts of the body, talking about how they have provided me with lifelong lessons and how to get along with others, how to evaluate my own personal strengths and weaknesses, and how to appreciate the valuable knowledge and insight my more experienced coworkers have to share. My final thought is to stress that there's an old saying that we can learn, that we can use, that tells us that we learn more about ourselves when we are with other people. And now that I'm more mature, I can truly understand the wisdom found in those words. So in this way, by using an old saying or an expression, I can demonstrate to the reader that this is clearly an important point that has taught me some valuable lessons. And now that I am an older, wiser person, I can see the wisdom of these ideas. So remember, the conclusion helps to remind the readers as to the main points and reasons for your essay to begin with, and is an important part that should not be totally neglected when you're writing your essay. Of course, many students forget to allow enough time to write a conclusion for their essay on the tests. So even though it's not the most important part of the task, again, that's the body, it does need to be included if you wish to receive a higher score. So it's now time to play an activity that we're going to call It's Hard to Say Goodbye. So the rules for this activity: you will see the introduction to another essay, and along with 3 possible conclusions. You will need to choose which conclusion is the best suited to match the given introduction. And remember, the best conclusions are ones that revisit the thesis without repeating it, addresses the main points of the body, and leaves the reader something to think about without beginning any new ideas, and that's important. Again, this paragraph was adapted from the Hogue book, The Essentials of English, A Writer's Handbook. This paragraph will appear on screen and can also be found below the video. So now it's time to read this introduction. So please pause the video to take time to read it. When you're ready, please return. Okay, are we ready? Here we go. So now let's look at our 3 possible conclusions. Here's number 1. In conclusion, other countries have influenced my country in many areas. Our citizens buy Japanese electronics, which have clearly benefited our society. Our young people wear blue jeans and drink Coca-Cola, which are relatively harmless imports from the United States. However, many of our young people have also adopted the values that they see in Hollywood movies. It is unfortunate that countries can't just import the good and keep the bad out. So there's number 1. Here's number 2. In conclusion, my country has been influenced by other countries in many ways. We have benefited from some and been harmed by others. Other imports have been neither especially helpful nor harmful. Some people in my country would like to stop harmful cultural imports. For example, they want to ban Hollywood movies and even the use of English. In my opinion, you can't, and shouldn't, stop the flow of ideas between countries. It is unfortunate that countries can't just import the good and keep the bad out. Here's the final conclusion. In conclusion, my country has Japanese electronics, American blue jeans, and French perfume. As a result, we are culturally richer. It is unfortunate that countries can't just import the good and keep the bad out. So, which one's the answer? Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? Well, let's take a look at them again. In this particular conclusion, we notice that we do have our signal word, so that's good. We've basically restated the thesis by saying that other countries have influenced their country in many ways. We've summarized some of the particular ways that they've done it, and even reviewed the idea that there have been some that perhaps are unfortunate, but in this case, countries can't just import good things and keep out the bad. This one looks pretty good. And guess what? It is, in fact, the answer. Well, let's look at the other two and see if we can figure out what's wrong with those. Well, again, there are lots of good things to recommend in the second one. For example, we still have our signal word to help introduce the conclusion idea. We do have a restatement of the thesis, much like we do in the first one. However, we do have a particular problem in that we do seem to introduce a new idea. In fact, if you notice, we use a signal such as "for example," which seems to begin to introduce an idea about banning Hollywood movies in the use of English. And in my opinion, these two types of phrases are probably types of expressions we should not see in a conclusion, because it seems like we're giving some other reasons or ideas that we probably should have included in the rest of the essay. So in this case, this particular conclusion seems to include too much, and includes ideas that were not introduced in the essay itself. Now let's look at the third possible conclusion and see what's wrong with it. At first, we see that there is a signal word or phrase, and that seems to be a good idea. But notice that we do seem to be missing a restatement of the thesis. In fact, what follows seems to be just a list of items that their particular country has seemed to have imported, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but clearly seems to be missing some of the ideas that would have been discussed in the essay. Also, notice it doesn't mention any of the potential negative things that have been imported. In fact, this person concludes that the ideas made them culturally richer, which may be true, but that's not the whole part of the essay. Remember, the idea is to revisit all of the ideas that were discussed in the essay. So in this case, this one is not appropriate simply because it seems to leave out too much information. Now it's your turn. Click on the link at the bottom of the page to do the activity. When you're finished, you're going to go to the video Day 5, Part 2. Good luck!